Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone. Welcome to our new podcast, your new project that we had with Zab. We talked to you a lot about this, and it took a bit of time to come, but it's finally here. The concept is Yonko, and Yonko, as you may know in Japanese, means emperor. And we're gonna talk about and with some of the most influential people in the esports industry. And we're so happy to start with the first guest we have today, Joe Marsh, CEO of Entertainment and Sport at T1. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like this is like 10 months in the making for me, and I
Right?
follow you guys every week for this. So thank you for letting me come on.
I mean, we wanted to do it the right way, and yeah, I know it took quite a bit of time, but I mean, we're doing this during World, so for me it makes sense. T1 is playing there. It's in NA. There's a lot of stories around this, but I don't even know where to start because your career is so huge and you've been doing so much. You joined T1 in 2019. If you could sum up the ride so far and these 3 years, 2 years and a half, how would you sum it up?
Um, I mean, I just hit 3 years like 2 days ago on October. So it's been 3 years.
Wow.
My first, I got the job, and then we were in Worlds 2019. So I would say that it's definitely been a learning experience. We've built an entire company from the ground up. And we when the transaction closed between Comcast, Spectacor, and SK Telecom, really got a League of Legends team, a training space in Ilsan, which is like 45 minutes north of anything, and a couple PUBG players, a Hearthstone player, and that was it. So we had to really build from scratch while also competing at the highest level, while going through free agency, while trying to navigate, kind of all the pitfalls of that. So it's been a pretty wild ride, and then COVID happened like 4 or 5 months into it as well. So like add that complication to it. So I think it's been certainly interesting. It's been nothing like I thought it would be. I think it's been both rewarding and fulfilling, but also really difficult. From a personal and professional standpoint. So, but I wouldn't change it. I think it's been a really good experience for me to kind of learn and grow from the opportunity. And having spent my entire career up until 3 years ago in America to work internationally, it's really kind of a blessing because it's such a different opportunity than you probably wouldn't normally get working at a corporation in the States. So getting opportunities to do international business and just you know, bicultural, everything that comes with it. I think it's been a really cool experience.
I have a little bit of a. I would like to know more about like how did you transition what you were doing before that? Because I mean, you've been writing that you've been part of Comcast for pretty much your whole life. So uh, let's speak about, I would say, out of high school, Joe. What did you study? What were your majors, and what were you interested in? Because you ended up in entertainment, right? But like, did
No,
you foresee that already before even thinking about esports?
no. So I definitely didn't think about esports. I didn't know that was a career back then. In college, I majored in marketing, and I always wanted to be in like sports marketing. I mean, I know it's a generic term, but it's kind of where I wanted to go. So, my second half of my junior year in university, I did an internship for an arena football team, which is like an indoor American football team that was owned by Bon Jovi, like the legendary rock star. So I did that, and then I met a guy named Joe Worley, who ended up being my first boss. He's a Penn Stater. I support Penn State. My now wife, actually played softball there, so a big blue and white, which runs deep in that family. But Joe, I met him there at the games. They were doing sales for the team, and their office would happen to be like right next to my house for some reason. I don't know why, because I live in the suburbs, and that's who they were. And I was like angling for an internship for my senior year, and they're like, "Hey, like we don't feel like interviewing anybody. Do you want to do it?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." So I interned. That was my first internship in Comcast, and then it was supposed to be for a semester, and then I did my first semester. We ended up moving down to the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, which is like where the sports complex is. So my office is like in the basketball and hockey arena. And then they came and said, "Hey, you want to like stay on for the rest of the semester, the second semester?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I was doing an internship, still finishing up school, and then in January of that year, the president at the time, a guy named Dick Sherwood, He came up to me. He's like, "Hey, yeah, we're gonna hire you full time. You'll start July 1st, and yeah, cool." And that was it. And I was like, at the time, I was doing a lot of sponsorship analysis, so I was like watching women's golf and NASCAR and analyzing like the different sponsors you see on screen. So that's kind of my first foray into sports. Was I was doing analytics work. Did that for a few years, and then an opportunity came up to move to the finance side, manage a bunch of the contracts and stuff. And I raised my hand to my then boss at the time. His name is Adrian Stady. He actually is the president of CAA Sports APAC, and he's a T1 sales agent. Like they're our partner. But he told me no. And then he went to lunch, and he came back. He's like, "Hey, you still want that?" I'm like, "Did the girl you offered it to want more money?" He's like, "Oh yeah. So do you want it?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So took that opportunity. I was managing like 7,000 contracts. So like anything that touched revenue for our company, I was the person that had the information on. So that's how I started kind of being responsible for understanding finances and numbers. That job dovetailed into doing actual finance and accounting and things like that, budgeting, forecasting. That's what I got pretty strong at for my career. I was really good at budgeting and forecasting and kind of operationalizing. So kind of blending the operation side with the number side. And then I got plucked out by our parent company, Comcast Spectacor, and our then CFO, Gary Rostick, to come to the parent company and do FP&A, which is financial planning and analysis for those non-nerds at home, and do it for the whole company. So the flyers, the building, and all of our subsidiary companies. But as part of that, Gary told me that I had to go back to get my master's degree because I was doing finance. I have a degree in marketing, and he said like on paper he wouldn't even hire me. So like, I went back to Villanova University, which is like out in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I got my master's, my MBA in finance, analytics, and strategic management, and did that while I was working full time. And at the tail end of that, we bought an Overwatch League team at Comcast Spectacor. So we bought the Philadelphia Fusion in August of 2017. We were the last team to kind of get into the league. They were looking for people to work on the project. I raised my hand. The project was being steered by Tucker Roberts. He was the president of Spectacor Gaming. They were like, "Oh yeah, that's cool, but we're going to give it to somebody else." So I was like, "Okay." That gentleman got promoted and left. So then my foray into gaming was I just started helping without even asking. So like I was moonlighting, doing video game stuff while still doing my regular day job. And for what I did for the Fusion to start with, I did the salary cap, I did the budgeting, I made sure that everything was in a row because we had 12 players. We just were standing up our esports operation. We had nothing. We were operating out of a house in California. We had 9 different countries represented. We were very much a melting pot. And I started doing budgeting, finance, salary cap. I remember I flew to California for my first time because this is back before we did video calls. So I would email a lot, and I email very formally because I raised in a corporate environment versus a gaming environment. And I remember when Tucker answered the door, and he's like, "Hey," I was like, "Hey, I'm Joe." Never met like in person. We didn't do video calls. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I thought you're gonna be like 50 years old because like you email like so formal." Like I was like, "No, I'm not 50." Like, "Oh, okay." But I was very much an outlier because I was very corporate versus like the video game like we are like the couch was that's a desk space in gaming, right? Like we had people just strewn with the garage was like a workstation. So and then that was in February. The next month, Tucker and I made our first ever trip to Korea, and he kind of laid out the vision for me about like wanting to get a League of Legends team to really go global. We were looking at NA was too expensive at the time because everything just franchised. Europe is the same way. So like the only avenue was the LCK that wasn't franchised at the moment. So we went around Korea. My then COO at the time, John Kim, before he was our COO at T1, he owned a gaming team called Meta Gaming in Korea, and he sold Overwatch players and had teams there. So he kind of shepherded us around Korea, introduced us to all the different teams. We had a bunch of meetings, and then everyone said the same thing. It's like, "Hey, like this is 2018, so it's like if you're serious about League of Legends and serious about Korea, you have to come back to Worlds 2018 and Busan." And I was like, "Okay." So we go back, we go to Korea, which ends up having to be like the literal worst world ever for Korea. I remember watching, was it IG? It was like a 5-hour game. It was like the longest game I've ever seen sitting in the stand. I think it was IG. Maybe it was somebody else, but it was like a
IG?
long game.
Yeah, it was IG.
Yeah, was it IG? So, and then after that, we went and had dinner with Riot, with LCK, and it leaked that we were there meeting with people. And the day before we boarded the plane, the last group of people we met with was SK Telecom. And when the article leaked that we were there, they mentioned every single team but SK Telecom and KT, because like the conglomerates wouldn't ideally merge with anybody. But you know, we hit it off. We had the same kind of passion. They were trying to spin out their gaming division. We were trying to get into Korea, and you know, fast forward a year later, boom, there we are. And so for me, it's kind of, I lucked into gaming. I played games growing up. I wasn't a pro gamer. I didn't play CS:GO. I never had a PC until I got to T1. It was just, you know, shout out to the sponsors for hooking up with all the great gear. But I was a console player. I played, you know, from Nintendo up through. I was a PlayStation guy. I played PlayStation. I didn't get into PCs until I got the job at T1. But that's how I got into gaming. I didn't know it was a career. And then the way we built T1, I built it like I would a traditional sports asset. I built from the ground up. I made sure that we had a pipeline of talent, and also, you know, we're able to add things via free agency. And here we are today, 3 years later. That's a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. But I have so many questions coming from this specifically. Okay, we're gonna roll back a bit because you explained a lot about your attachment to business and the business side of things, even when it touches sports. I'm kind of wondering still, what was your relationship to sports, and what in sports, in this whole industry, in the competitive sense, attracted you, and which values did you respond to when it comes to sports? Because I think you also get into an industry like this, and then later on in sports, if you share some values that respond to sports and everything like this.
Yeah, so I played sports my entire life. Here in the U.S., it's very seasonal when I was growing up. So you play, you know, football, basketball, baseball, and then for me, I also did Taekwondo with my family, which is a Korean martial art. I'm a black belt in that. So little did I know, like from, you know, 6 years old on, where I'm doing things in and around, you know, Taekwondo, which I was exposed to, you know, Korean restaurants, and my grandmasters from Korea. So like I learned a lot about the culture. And for me, it was about competitiveness. It was about perseverance. You know, all the rules that we learned in Taekwondo, self-control and that kind of stuff, really carried into what I do from a business side. Because I think like anybody in sports in general, like you're naturally hyper competitive. Like I want to win, you know, whether it's doing a business deal or winning on the Rift. Like I want to win at all times, and it doesn't always work, and only one person can win, right? So you fail probably more than you want to. But I think that was really what transitioned over from like my traditional sports playing to the business side, was just the competitive nature of it. And you know, with sports, especially esports, it's like who's up, who's down today. Like it's just like it ebbs and flows. And you know, I might be on top of the world in spring, and then I'm down in summer, and now I'm hopefully back again at Worlds. Like, and it's the same thing with the players. And you know, I just try to create an environment that can withstand the ebbs and flows of the competitive nature of esports.
I have a question about more so in esports, because I feel like a lot of people that are coming into esports from with a sports background kind of still hit the wall of because esports culture is very, I would say, nitpicky about a lot of details, and like finding, especially as an executive, right, finding your own communication pace with the audience, right? We're gonna probably like dig even more about the difference between the American, I would say, the westernized and the Korean audience. But at first, regardless of the audience, how did you feel? Like, oh no, I'm a CEO. Like, I need to communicate as the CEO of T1, being on top of that, like a merge between a westernized company and a very traditional, as you said, like it's pretty much the Korean national team. How did you feel about like I would say like the first 6 months being in T1?
I definitely tweeted way too much in the first 6 months. I learned. I remember having a conversation with Tucker about my tweeting, and he's like, "Hey man, like let's dial it back." Because I think I was always background worker. I was never CEO of anything, right? So like I was never the face of an operation. I was an operator. I was I would just do the work, and that's how I kind of made my ends meet there. But when I got the job at T1, it was definitely trial by error. I was trying to learn on the job, so to speak, because you know esports is, like you said, it's different. You get punished from the fan base if you misspeak and use the wrong nomenclature for things. Like if I called champions heroes or agents, like for league, like you can't do that. Like the way you spell esports, if there's a stupid hyphen or a capital, like it's like there's so many little nuanced things that you have to know. So I tweeted too much, I think, early on. I think I found a better rhythm later. I think what was important was to put a human face to it all and to not be a robot. I can't, the way because we are predominantly a Korean org, I can communicate in a certain way up to a certain line, but I have to make sure not to cross it because the way you would communicate in the West, whether it's in Europe or in the U.S., you can get away with a lot more. In Korean culture, like the meme culture, there's different memes in each culture. So like the Western memes aren't necessarily going to parlay over to Korea, and also just the way you communicate and are able to engage with fans. I think it's important to give as much information as possible because what I realized pretty early on is like if I say something from my Twitter account and it could be innocuous, I could even be talking about a completely different subject, like a Penn State game. But because I'm Joe from T1, anything I say from that account is viewed that it's the position of T1. And you have to be very, very careful with that and make sure you don't say anything stupid when you did not intend to at all. So that was a big thing for me. It's just kind of trying to figure out how to communicate. I still don't get it all right all the time. I'm still learning 3 years later, but I think if you stop learning on a job, then you've plateaued. So it's always really important in my mind to continually, try to improve and learn. And I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't try to have all the answers. I try to surround myself with great people and let them do their jobs, and by extension, give them opportunities to help the company grow. And the CEO, it's the face of it all, right, with the players. So I get too much credit and too much blame, but I would rather it be, the blame come towards me than the team that's working hard behind the scenes. And it's part of the job, and you have to kind of have a little bit of a thick skin with it all, especially with internet culture. I think in general, like, internet's gonna win 100% of the time. It's undefeated. It always will be because it's anonymous. And but you can't not get back on the horse if you get knocked off. You have to kind of find your avenue back in, and even if that means a short break from social media or just doing appearances, like trying to make sure that when you come back in that you're earnest and honest about it, and kind of a little bit of hat in hand, and not be all knowing, which I think can get you in trouble a bit.
I think it's super interesting, especially when you see everything that's happened recently when it comes to CEOs being the visible face of companies. Not to mention, I mean, Carlos, especially with how he was leading G2. I think about Jacques Etienne also, and when you think of Cloud9 and the fact that you have more and more Kameto also in France with K Corp, and the fact that you have more and more visible faces of companies to incarnate these esports structures. And I mean, you say that you still haven't figured it out, but to me it's normal because an American company merging with the most prestigious esports Korean team, you're innovating in that sense, and it's something that had never done it before. So I don't know, how do you see yourself in this approach and the fact that you had to bring yourself, because you said in the Players Tribune that you've always been honest, and I think it's also why maybe you always communicated in that way. So I want to know more about your approach when you decided to take on this role. You said that if the blame has to fall onto someone, it has to fall on you. How do you manage all this, staying yourself, staying Joe, but also being the face and representative for T1?
Great question. I think honestly, it's being honest. Like I think I'm honest to a fault at times when, like, if you ask me a question, I try to give you a direct answer. I don't do like the corporate speak, or like I probably should. Like I know Lucia runs comms for us, but probably wish I would just like say the script. But I think that's not the way to operate in this environment, especially in this type of business where our fans they're your lifeline. Like they're your consumers, they're your people that watch your videos, your content, support your players. So you have to be able to communicate. I think for me, trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want to say anything dumb. I think for me, it's important to be as honest as I can in situations where I can, and there's always situations where I can't. Like when people are asking me, like, "Who are you signing?" or "What's wrong with the environment?" Like, fire your coaches, do this. Like, people have to understand. Like, I see all of it, and like there's a course and a process and a dance to all of it. You can't just make an abrupt change because on the league side, there's 5 kids that are affected if I just do something haphazardly, right? So just because we don't like the way something is going, you can't pull the plug and switch. There's not an infinite number of coaches just lying around the street in Korea or anywhere. Like you have to believe in your system. You have to set things up. I know Jack is very fond of his systems in North America, what they're doing with Cloud9. Like they're working out great, but for us, the timing is everything. And I've been here long enough when I know things aren't working, right? I know, like in 2020, I knew that wasn't going to work, right? That's why I made the change to the coaches. In 21, I thought it was going to work, and then you don't know someone until they're there, until they're in your building and they're operating, and like how they are, how they treat people, how they operate, and I knew that wasn't going to work. And instead of waiting like I did in 2020 to make a move, when I should have moved in June of 2020 on that one, I moved in July, and I moved quickly because I knew that if I didn't make a change, I'm not going to Worlds, and it's another 2 years in a row. So we made the change. Polt stepped up, and at that time, at that moment in time, like Polt was the right voice for the players, right? So like you make the coaching changes, and you have to stick with it. And like I know from the outside looking in, like if you look at my track record, it's like Homa left, Kim made 1 year, Danny didn't finish a whole year, Polt got almost a year and a half, and now I'm with Bengi. And it's not that I like to change coaches and I'm some kind of tyrant with coaching staffs and things. It's just I listen to my players. Like I have those conversations, with them, and especially when you have someone like Faker, like he's lived it. I mean, he just hit his 100th game at Worlds, and he has win rates 72%. You have to listen to people. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know everything. I don't. I wish I did, because then I would I'd be 3-0 right now, as we sit here in groups, and I wouldn't be 2-1, right? If I knew everything. So, but you have to be vulnerable enough to listen to someone else and hear opinions. And I always tell my staff, like, I don't care if the idea comes from the intern. Like, if there's a good idea to be had, I want to hear it. I don't need all the good ideas to come out of my head, because we would be nowhere if all the ideas are mine. So, I think for me, it's just about learning when to admit that you need to make a change. And even this year, like Polt, I didn't want to make the change. Like coming out of spring, we were fine. Then MSI happens, and then like the mentality is shifting. Like you see the environment, you're around people enough, you see the scrims, like you see the culture, what's going on, like, and then knowing what it takes to win Worlds, and like how you have to be operating for that month at the most optimal level as humanly possible. I felt the change was right to make. For Bengi, like it wasn't just like Bengi as like, hey, you're doing this. Like we talked to Bengi. It was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. I want you to think about if you even want this position, because this is not an easy position. Working at T1 and being a league coach is not an easy position for anybody. Working as the head coach for someone like Bengi, who is a 3-time world champion for the team, do you want this? Because I remember when Bengi first got out of the military, he came to the office the first month, and I was like, I want to offer you a job. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you pick your career path. Do you want to be a coach and you want to go up that rank, or do you want to be a streamer? I was like, I just want you here. I want you to be part of the organization. You're really, really important. And he went away, and he came back, and then he picked coach, right? So he coached our challengers team. He won a spring title, and he joined our roster this year. So but I wanted it to be Bengi's decision, not my decision. So like Bengi could have easily said, no, I don't want to do this. And he could, and that would have been his right, and I would respect it. Fortunately for us, Bengi said yes. And the things that Bengi has done in a short amount of time, and the system that he's put in place, and the processes, it's very communication driven. It's very much what him and Faker were used to back in 2013, 15, like the Coma system. It's there's feedback, like at the individual level and at the team level after the scrims, each set, right? So like it's about holding people accountable. We do these workshops. We did one in California. We did them in Korea, where the players are able to share their opinions. Like, and it's tough when you're a younger player and your teammates, the greatest player of all time. Like, you probably have a tendency to not share your opinion, right? And we have an environment where any player, regardless of their experience, is able to share their opinion. And I think it's really important. It's really healthy. It's actually helped us a ton. And for we wouldn't even be in this position if Faker didn't, have the adaptable personality that he has and skill set that he has. Because again, Faker of 2013 is not Faker of 2022. He's a different person. He's matured. He's grown. He's the oldest player. He's the leader. He's the captain. So that becomes a heavier crown to wear, right? Than when you're the hot rookie coming through and your expectations are like he's just a great player. So he's afforded us the opportunity to even be where we're at because of his adaptability and flexibility and all of it. So I hope that answers it. I don't know, like, did I
Yeah.
ramble too much?
Sorry.
But I hope I gave some insights.
I have a question to you. Who do you look up to if there is a person do you look up to in the esports industry, right? Whether it's a CEO or like even a coach or a player, because I feel like it's always very hard when you're that high, right, in the hierarchy of organization, to have some type of mentorship, because it's such a young. You were speaking about your first boss, and you seem to be speaking very highly of him. But when you move to esports, you really do not have any track record of people that can actually, mentor you. And that's a question we do have, right, Laura and I, when we speak to French audience, like, who was your first, person you could look up to? And usually it's known, but do you have some people you look up to in esports?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have, I would say, a mentor in esports per se, because like I'm fortunate enough to work at Comcast. I have Tucker, kind of, who's an invaluable resource for me personally, just everything that we've been through and building these past few years. So I think from that sense, I have a good, Lennon and McCartney duo with Tucker. And I think, part of the reason why we're here is like, he has the vision and I have the execution. So like when Tucker comes up with these things and dreams these ideas, has been able to rely on me to execute the play. And I think from that standpoint, I definitely admire our relationship. And up until a few years, we didn't know each other, and then we were able to have a really honest relationship. I think, which is really important. And I really admire that. I think from a watching from a far standpoint, I think Steve from Liquid has a really great business and demeanor. I think he does a great job what he's doing at Liquid. I also respect a lot Sam from Fnatic. I think Sam's one of the OG guys that kind of really built things up from the ground up and really has done a really nice job. Diversifying what they do at Fnatic and making it a very viable company. I think recently more though, I think I've been enjoying my interactions and private conversations with Kamito. Just what he's been able to accomplish with Carmine. I think in such a short amount of time, like because it's again, he's coming in from an influencer standpoint, right, and leading a company, and we've seen the highs and lows of that type of role right recently. But I think Kamito does a really good job. He's built a fantastic fan base, which again, you can have the coolest brand in the town. If you don't have any fans to support the brand, it doesn't matter how cool your logo is. So KC's done a really good job. I enjoy engaging with their fans too. They're pretty funny. And they are truly a blue wall. I mean, geez, like they are everywhere. And but I'm really impressed with what he's been able to build, and looking forward to competing against them in Valorant too. But yeah, those are the three I would say from a esports team, perspective. I would say that like I like the way they're doing business, and they're all three of them are doing things differently, right? I think they're not operating the exact same way. I think also too, I think the fourth one would be what Nade Shots built with John Robinson at 100 Thieves. I think they could stop playing competitive esports tomorrow and still have a great company and do a lot of great things. And it's hard to build a brand from scratch. I mean, we were terrified just doing a rebrand from SKT T1 to T1 and a logo change. And Matt's been able to build a really great brand from the ground up, and obviously had a celebrity from his playing days. But the 100 Thieves brand, it's kind of transcended gaming itself, and it's kind of more it's more broader, which is great and sustainable. So I think those are the four I would say that really come to mind.
Okay, I want to challenge this and talk about the relationship you had with Faker, especially talking about the first time you met him. I think it was in Madrid when you went and had dinner with him and his family. I mean, I think it's fair to say that we're all fans of Faker. It's hard not to.
Well, I met him before that because
Yeah?
that was
Okay.
again, Madrid was in October. I met him in February
Okay.
of 2019. So I met him like months earlier, but like I met him as like a generic gentleman that was like, hey, these two guys, because it was Tucker and I was like, hey, these two guys. I don't think the kids understood like who we were at the time. They did thought we were some of the guys from America coming to hang out, and we kept showing up. But that was the first time I met him was back then. And I remember
I
like
see.
being in awe because we were like scripting like what we're gonna say to him, like, hey, like, how do we like ask for like a picture? Like we were like so new with it, and I remember like it was just such a again like even I wasn't in the space, but even I know who Faker was, right? Like everyone, like he's even outside of you don't play League of Legends, you probably know who he is, right? So I just remember like when we first got there, like and had the first interaction. I think there's actually a photo on the internet. It's like all the players and me and Tucker. I think I'm wearing like a blue sweater. It's like a light blue sweater. But I remember and we're all like holding our fingers up. But that was when we had like the super team. We had Mata and Khan and like we had that whole team and Teddy and then I got there. So then we finished the season and I show up in Berlin. I think we were in Berlin for the group stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I remember like I was like a total nerd because I was like, obviously there's a language barrier, so I'm trying to interact and like we didn't have systems in place, so like I had to rely on everyone else around me. But they were very friendly. He was always very kind. I think the first substantial conversation that I really had with Faker was when we extended him in February. It was like January of 2020. I kind of went to him and his team, which is obviously his dad and his uncles, and had the conversation in our little building, in Ilsan, and we sat in a cafe, and I was explaining to Faker about like offering him shares of the company and like why I thought this was important, aligning our two futures together, which is like it was so important for the person that kind of built where SKT T1 was to benefit in the upside of the new company, and that's the way I was trying to communicate that to him and his team, and they put a deadline on it. It was like, hey, if you don't get this done by the start of the season, we will table the discussions. So we got it done the literal day before the season started. So, but I'm thankful. And then, slowly and surely, like, we've had conversations along the way, and again, they're not as frequent as you want because again, language barriers. But when we do have conversations, they're meaningful because I'm going to him as not only a player and the greatest player of all time, but he's also an owner and my boss, right? In that sense, right? He's an owner of the company. So, keeping him and his team abreast of the things that we're doing or the webtoon that we've launched and all these different things, the academy business, like, hey, this benefits you in XYZ way. And he's a very astute person, very smart, very well read. I think he's read like 3 books already at Worlds this year. Like he had 2 books on him simultaneously. When we were scrimming at Red Bull, he had 2 books with him. So like, he's very well read. He's very smart, and he asks really good questions. So, but when we have tough conversations around, like July of 2021 or things like that, when I'm making tough calls, like Baker, to his credit, has never said fire or hire XYZ. He's always said, I will, I'll do what it takes. You make the decisions on this, this is the first off season. Like last year was when he asked for things, which was like an analyst and a former pro player as a coach, like on the staff. And that was the first time in 3 years where he actually asked for anything in terms of like specifically. Because I remember a lot of times it would be like, hey, who do you want to play with? And he said like, it doesn't matter. Like I'll play with anybody. I'm flexible. And this was the first time where that was a request to be made. So, but it's interesting. Like when we have meals together in Korea, a lot of the times we have to eat in private rooms because he's a celebrity, like he's a superstar. So we sit down to have a meal, and when like you're sitting there and you kind of recognize somebody, and like the phone like slowly starts going like this, and you can see it happening, and like so like you see it, and then you see the whispering, and then like the nerves to like get up and like come over to the table. Like it happens all the time, and he's so used to it, and he's such a gentleman about it. But it's just a different stratosphere from the other kids. Like it's just he is a true celebrity that has a whole set of things that he has to deal with that no one else does in gaming, like in esports, at least for League. Like I don't think players in the U.S. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but like are they getting stopped for photos? Are they doing commercials with the best footballer in the world? Like are they doing stuff with BTS? Like, he is just in a different level. Like celebrities want to see him. I mean, Kim Hee Chol, who's a K-pop star, skipped his like New Year's plans to do a TV show with Faker 1 year. So like, you know, he's the good thing about Faker is he's grounded. He has a great family behind him. You know, starting from his grandma to his dad, and his uncles, and his brother. Like, he's raised the right way, and I think that comes across, especially when you have interactions with his family and him. And I always appreciate, you know, talking to his family when I see them. I'm actually going to be with them on Thursday at the matches. Like they're in town. His uncles are, so I'll see them there. But yeah, it was nerve wracking the first couple times I met him because it was just like, oh shit, this is Faker. Like,
We
go.
we just talk about Faker, but I know that everything you say applies to I don't know, everything that's linked to T1 and to SKT and how big the organization is. And I admire the dedication and the work you put into just being included. And I think that's the right way to do it. But you often said that you still felt like an outsider nonetheless when it comes to the Korean side. So I just want to ask, how are you managing this day? And what do you think is missing or different, maybe, in that sense?
Yeah. I mean, look, the T1's the Korean national team, right? No matter if I'm running it or somebody else is. So, I think it's been a marriage for the fans to get used to a name change, right? Because back when the team was SKT T1, and we were just a game team inside a conglomerate. So like the rules were different, right? Like the expectations are different, and the requirements are different. And when you're a company, like when we're a proper company that has a board and everything, like there's expectations about profitability and revenue and growth and all that. And you know the players are a huge part of that, and they're also compensated very much as the superstars are compensated. So there's things that come along with that, right, to help drive the growth of the company. And I think that's one of the things I don't think I've ever been really able to communicate properly. I've tried to explain that, hey, like this is not a game team, this is a company. Like I know people like joke about the entertainment and sports stuff, but like you have to diversify your business operations outside of just having game teams, or else we won't be here next year. And like I am worried, like other esports CEOs are, about the consolidation of esports teams over the next 12 to 18 months because the money's drying up for teams. The capital markets are really bad. The people that came into the gaming in like 2016, 2017 with like the capital money from like hedge funds and whatever, like they're going away because they're not getting their $1 billion back they thought they were going to get. So, you know, you have to make your business survive. And for us, it's about, you know, doing music projects. Like we just, you know, released our song Last Man Standing and our video, our webtoon, like our esports academy business. We can't just be a game team, because if that's what we were, like we wouldn't have any funding, because no one wants to fund just a game team. Like they want a proper business. So that's one of the things I really wish I could communicate. It's not just T1; it's all the teams. If you look around the ecosystem, are diversifying their businesses, right? Like they've skinnied down the game teams we have. We're really focused on League, Dota, and Valorant. And like that's, you know, we have MKLeo and Smash, but that's a single player game. Like, but then look at like Liquid has their agency business. They have their merchandise and collaborations. TSM has their Blitz app, right? Like, you know, 100 Thieves has their apparel business. They're launching a game. Like, you have to do this to survive, and then that's how you get more investors to fund the business. So, like, if you want to pay players big salaries to keep all the talent, you have to be able to make the revenue back. And I think I just have never been able to have that to communicate that properly. I don't know if it's a barrier on my side, but that's one of the things I really wish people would understand is it's not just a T1 thing or Joe's Western and wants to do other things. That's how you fund a company. Like we have a board that, you know, expects return on their investment. So things had to change, right, from being SKT T1 to T1, and you know, and one of the things I can't change ever. Like I'm not Korean. You know, I get it, and it's, you know, when I've never tried to take credit for anything of the team. I've always tried to just amplify what was really great about SKT T1. You know, I understand that my personality or like the way I am is not going to be for everybody, and I accept that and I get that. But I've always tried to be as inclusive as possible, as open as I can, like to communicate with everybody. And again, like my style of communication may not be for everybody, but it was never to be disingenuous or to be shifty or anything. It's just I tried to be as honest as I can. There's certain things I can't like never answer questions on, like, hey, how much does X nut YZ player make? Like things I can't tell people, or like, who are you scouting in the off season? Like certain things stay inside the house, right? And that's part of the fandom. Like fans are going to want to know, and we try to give them as many glimpses as we can, but you can't tell everyone everything because then you're giving your opponents the ability to see what you're doing and telegraphing moves, and you don't want to do that either. So it's like trying to walk that fine line. But yeah, that's what I think of where I've had some headwinds, so to speak.
I want to have some of your mind on, like you were mentioning, the business side of things, which is extremely important in esports, right? It's I think a recurring question is like, how do you make money in esports? Because so far, I think that owning an esports asset has been more liability than an asset for most of the, I would say, owners. So we have different type of teams right now. We still have the, I would say the lower end teams that are just like VC on, holding some slots and waiting to see how the market evolves, right? And then you have teams that really try to create like some IPs out of what they do have. You mentioned Liquid with the agency. You mentioned Blitz app for TSM. I think that 100 Thieves has a portfolio of influence, and esports has to like is taking part of it, but they try to be like a street life company in right. It's like it's pretty much everything included in this one. And for instance, Carmine Corp seems to like go towards more a club, like a pure esports club. In that sense, how do you see, I would say, the future of esports? Because everybody seems to have their own take on it.
Yeah.
And for T1, how do you see like T1 evolving in terms of, I would say, esports company? Let's try to go above the tier of just being a club or a team. But as an esports company, how do you see like T1 in the future?
Yeah, I think we're always going to be. There's certain teams that aren't rooted in about winning. Like, there's certain teams that like they don't have to win another thing tomorrow, and they can still survive based on legacy. So I think we're fortunate to share in a certain legacy halo effect of that, right? I think that only lasts for as long as Faker's playing, and then what happens when in 10 years he's not here, right? He's not playing anymore. He's just an executive, or he's doing other things. So I think for us, we've already started our slow diversification. We've done a couple things in music. Our webtoon's been really successful, which is IP that we own that we'd love to turn into something animated down the road. I think our academy business is T1 Esports Academy is going to be really great for us long term because it's allowing us to see the next generation of talent come through our system at 14, 15 years old. And then they can be on one of our teams, and we're going to diversify into different games there. So I think Valorant is another game that we're exploring for our academy. I think those are really important, but it's also what's next because the sponsorship market is drying up for teams across the world, just given the economy. So how are you able to work with the publishers to really unlock the real money, which is skins? In-game revenue is what all the teams need to survive. I think I joked with Nas on the league side that if you just give me a skin, one skin a year, make it a mid lane skin, give me a Zier, give me LeBlanc, give me one skin, we'll split the revenue 50-50. That could fund my entire probably league operation for the whole year. Because I know that if I had a league skin that was a mid lane skin on a champion that Faker plays, fans would buy it. So if that does ever happen where Riot unlocks some in-game economics for teams, I think we'll be one of the primary beneficiaries of that revenue. That's why winning worlds is so important to teams because of the windfall of cash from the skins that come through. So I also think like I do believe there's a proper way to execute on the metaverse and everything that's happening there, and then the virtual economy. I think we've launched our T1 fan platform, which they sold out our exclusive window to buy the World's uniforms was offered to our fan club, and they bought them all. So like having those opportunities and incentivizing your fans, your fans that are hardcore and they're looking to have access and insights, and that's been great to see. So I think you're gonna see a lot of that, and I think tech platforms and integrations I think are really important, but also I think M&A and mergers are going to happen over the next few years. So whether that's esports teams merging with another proper bolt-on business, or whether that's a team acquiring a business like Blitz was acquired by TSM, that's really important to survive. I think over the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see like only a handful of teams, like big teams that can actually move the market left. And like you said, there's a lot of small teams that are kind of hanging around and having slots. But even then, like it's gonna be difficult to just hold on to a slot, because you need to be hyper competitive, or else you have a dead slot that's just you paid a lot of money for, that's not going to be worth anything other than maybe 10 million, 20 million sell the slot. Like you have to build an org that's ready to sustain kind of the esports winter. And I know Arnold from Gen G has talked about esports winter all the time, but like he's not wrong. Like it's certainly coming. You're feeling it. Like you're seeing it happen. And we just want to be diversified enough that we can survive the winter, so to speak, when it does come.
I have just maybe to double down on that. I want to, like you were speaking about the esports winter. In France, we do have a very common discussion about open leagues and franchise leagues. That's one of the biggest topic that's like recurring topic.
And publishers, I guess, because
and publisher, obviously we'll probably
hold
speak about the
everything.
publishers as well, because it has to. I mean, it's kind of like a toe to toe. Which one do you advocate for, right? Because for instance, in Europe, there is no way you can participate in the league, be 10th.
You're talking about business.
The next year.
You're talking about business sustainability here, I guess. No.
And I'm
and
speaking
how to
about
make a
sports
business
first, because I think
profitable.
that what creates the business is the people watching the league first, right? Like there is no sports without audience. And so, for instance, here in Europe, it's like it's so important for people that some teams from the lower league can actually join the upper league, and there is like the relegation process that used to happen in the past. And to this day, now we have like secured slot, like an American, I would say, driven structure in the LEC, and we have all these discussions about buying the slots, for Carmine and stuff. So I wanted to know a little bit like what's your take on it sports wise, and obviously you can add on top what do you think about the business, because that's always a trade-off between like what the audience wants versus what it brings to the table in terms of a business and economy.
Yeah. Well, I think the days of like buying franchise slots are over. I think that no one's going to do that anymore. I think the Valorant model, like where they did partnership model and there's opportunities to go up, that's a better model. I said this to the LCK guys. I was like, can we just like go back to the old model? I believe the relegation model is a better model for Korea, because it allows for those opportunities, very much like European football, where the bottom two fall out, two teams come up, and it gets new rivalries. Because what you don't want to see is what you kind of see in the LCK, in some other leagues too. There's 4 teams that have a shot, there's a gatekeeper, and then there's 5 bottom teams that don't have a chance.
Yeah.
And like that's not great for viewership. T1's viewership is double the next team. Our league is double up. We have the smallest amount of revenue versus the other leagues because there's a bigger sponsorship base in Europe and America. I think at World so far, T1 has the 3 highest rated matches. I think 1.3, 1.4 million views each time, not including China. I want to go back on the League of Legends side. I would love to go back to the relegation model, open system. I think it was healthier for League of Legends in Korea. I think it created better storylines. You had teams like Generi coming through. You had the old Griffin Gaming when they came through. Like that's how you got Chovy, right? He was on a relegation team that came up. Like it's a better system. I think that system's possible if you open up the in-game economics and in-game skins. If you adapt a model that is similar to what they do at Valve for Dota or CS:GO, and allow in-game economies, trading of skins, things like that, like to allow new revenue streams, you can get away with not having the upfront franchise payment. Because like think about it, what do the franchise payments get the teams other than money out of their pocket? because we're not investing in the players. Again, it's why Valorant switched to the partnership model to allow you to invest into the teams and build super teams to compete. And you're going to grow the game by you're incentivized to do content, like things like that. So League of Legends, like if we can find a way to migrate towards a system like that, Carmine Corp's never going to pay $40 million for a slot. They don't need to. They're in a league where they dominate. They have all the viewership. They do live events. If you opened up the system to be a relegation model, Carmine's up there, and that's huge for the LEC because now you have a team that has the resources, has the cachet, has the fan base to compete with the biggest teams there. So you're competing with G2 and Mad Lions and Fnatic and Rogue, and that's a better system than Carmine just hanging out in the LFL and just not coming up, right? So I really wish they would go back to the old model for us in Korea. I know it's like it's hard to not admit defeat, but it's hard to say, hey, you know what, like let's go back.
I don't know.
It's not a failure. It's not that it didn't work. It was the right thing to do at the time because everyone was doing it, and like I get it. But hey, like 2022, 2023, like yeah, okay, cool. We're gonna do playoffs and we're gonna do losers brackets and whatever. Fine, that's great. But like at the end of the season, it's gonna be no matter if you have losers brackets or not, it's gonna be the same 4 teams.
Yeah. And I agree completely on that, and the fact that it was a necessary step back then, especially to build, industrial force, because this also brought more sponsors, more stability, and trust for people to invest in esports teams, knowing that you're going to stay there anyway. This is your slot, you're just buying it. I also wish we could revert right now. I'm just wondering how possible it is given the amount of money that was invested in franchise. That's all.
It's possible because you don't pay all the money up front.
Yeah.
So it's possible. I think I was saying this to Nas when we were in Korea for MSI. We need more international competitions with the teams. They can't just play each other once a year at Worlds and like maybe once if you make MSI. Like there needs to be competitions, and whether it's like I get you can't fly everybody and stuff, but like can there be mini international competitions where 2 LEC, 2 Korean, 2 Chinese, 2 American teams come together, pick the teams, doesn't matter, they could alternate, or you can do multiple, and like have that be a mini tournament. Because spring split doesn't matter. If I win MSI, you get nothing from it except a delay to your summer start. Like maybe they change that, and then you win MSI, you're guaranteed to go to Worlds, right? That's at least something. Or if you win spring, winning spring means nothing. Like you're better off. Like the LCS teams are better off sending their teams to Korea for an entire split, letting their backup teams play, and just going on solo queue in Korea and boot camping and doing that and getting stronger than playing in summer and spring split, and then come back for summer and compete. So there needs to be more international competitions. Like there needs to be, it brings eyeballs, it brings viewership, the fans love it. Like look at the crowds. Like I know the American performance is not great, but the crowds are wild. They're rabid. Like even LCS finals, like that was awesome. Like
yeah,
we need more of that. We need more live events. We need more international events. You can't just get like see each other twice a year. It's unhealthy for the sustainability. Like you want more competitions. There's ways to fund it. Like again, in-game economy. Like you can fund. If you told fans, hey, buy this skin pack, and if we raise X dollars, we're going to bring 8 teams together to compete for a 2-week event that's live. People would support that, and I think it would be helpful for the ecosystem. I think what you're seeing Valorant do with the open partnerships, and then everyone's going to Sao Paulo, Brazil, all 30 teams, and they're all going to compete to kick off the season. That's awesome. Where is that for League of Legends? Like, let's get January, instead of going to like extra spring games, which spring doesn't matter as we've already discussed. Play a little mini international event, have a shortened spring split, do everyone makes the playoffs tournament, winner of that gets to go to MSI, whatever, then it would go back. There has to be some kind of change. And I think Nas is really open to thinking outside the box, and I don't think she's married to any one idea because that's the way we've always done it. So I'm hopeful with her leadership that there's opportunities for international expansion in that sense.
An actual World Cup one day, maybe. Like, yeah.
That would be awesome.
I feel like I don't know if it's a big topic. I mean, obviously in Korea, Koreans would be very happy that there is a World Cup of League of Legends per nations. I'm pretty sure like China would be absolutely super delightful about it. So that's something that we really advocate for. I mean, at least the French audience. I feel like, for instance, we all come in Europe from soccer. Soccer obviously is going to shape the way we think about sports. The way I think basketball has shaped the way Riot has been thinking about esports when they started it almost 10 years ago. And for us, it's so important, within the calendar that starts in pretty much in late August and ends up like in June. We have breaks of 1-2 weeks where players fly to their own country and they actually play with the national team. And there's like a, what do you call it, like it's the coach, but yeah, as well, that like has the right to select the players. And then there are like international tournaments that happen within countries. So I do understand that within the Riot ecosystem, especially for League of Legends, they have replaced countries per regions because like not every country would make it if it was per country and would be less global. But since Riot now, I think, has globalized way more, and you can see it with like the thrive of Valorant, for instance, in Japan, which wasn't big in esports and stuff like this. What's your stance on like national events for esports?
I think if they're done in the off season, it's not a problem. I think if you try to do it in the middle of the season, it throws off. I mean, as a coach, like it throws off everything that because you're like locked in during the season. I think the season's too long, to be honest. Like January through November is way too long for a regular season. Like you could probably take a month back and shorten the spring and do something like that. I think I'd love national events. We have Asian games in Korea, so like we play the other countries, and that's if you win a gold medal, you're military exempt, so that's a big deal. But I agree. Like I would like to know like who are the best 5 players from each country. They come to compete, and what does it look like? Because I think everyone wants to know that, right? It's like going to the Olympics and measuring against that. And maybe we do a competition like that, and then opens up to the Olympics. We're like, you know what? Like let's let competitive gaming into the Olympics as well, because the amount of physical and mental strain it takes, like it's just like being a traditional sports athlete as well. Like people need to see that they need to see the games play at their highest level and not at like a mediocre level. So like I think if you put the best and brightest for each country, I think it's good. I just think in the middle of the season it would be very, very hard to pull off, especially with logistics. But if it's in the off season, it's in that like, December through January phase, it's certainly a possibility.
I have go on, Laura.
Okay.
I have a very open-ended question, so
Yeah,
it's
me too. Just falling back on this topic we were talking about previously about esports and how teams need to branch out and link it to the mainstream. I tend to think that it also, I mean, it's also linked to the whole competitive schedule and how it's organized and Riot's vision on things. Esports was created taking inspiration from sports directly, but I don't think esports is sports per se. I think it's a mix of entertainment and competition, and this is where esports should grow to. I'm just wondering I think esports takes itself maybe a bit too seriously sometimes when we need more events, as you said, more places where fans can meet, more competitions, and I just want to have your thoughts on this and how esports should look like in an ideal world and what it should converge to.
Yeah. I think esports is truly sports and entertainment. Like, which is why you see teams load up on content creators, because our guys, not everyone is a big personality, right? Like we're fortunate to have a Gumushi, which is his personality and style is not typical for Korea, right? So even when they make us do those like cringy trash talk segments for like LCK finals, it's so hard because our players are very they're taught at a young age to be very respectful. So like it's like pulling teeth, like trying to make them talk trash. But like you look at what Wonder's been saying online right for the past weekend for their their 2-1 start. Like that's something that like not everyone is as gifted on the microphone as others. So we do take ourselves, I think, too serious. I think as a fandom, like I feel like we gatekeep a little bit. Like if you weren't season 2, like you can't come in. Like you have to stop that. Like let everyone kind of come in. Everyone has to have a starting point. Like your journey has to start somewhere. Whether you're this season or 5 years ago, like you have to like start somewhere. And like we should embrace anyone that wants to come in, because again, in America, we need the League of Legends user base to grow. We need the same thing in Korea and Europe. Like we need more people playing the game. I don't think the game's accessible because it's so hard. Like it's a very difficult game to play. Like where is the content and the opportunities to like learn the game at an early stage to attract more players into the ecosystem. I'm not saying that they have to be faker, but you want more casual players. It's why Valorant's taken off so much, because FPS is instantly, significantly easier to play than League. But the player base in Valorant is massive, right? And there's a reason for that. So like, how do you make League more accessible from a casual, consumer standpoint, gamer standpoint, and then also how do you translate that fan to an esports fan? Because there's way more people that play video games than there's esports fans. So like, there's a delta. As organizations and publishers, we have to figure out how to get the 60 million players of your game, and you have 4 million esports fans. Like, what about the other people? So like, we have to become more accessible and figure out ways to do that, whether that's content, whether that's, amateur events, whether it's being, easier to play. I don't know the answer. I'm not the czar on that one, but there's a gap. There's a lot more consumers that aren't watching esports that are playing the actual game. So like, how do you get them to become fans of the product played at the highest level?
So, following up on that question, what's your favorite esports to watch, and what's the best esports game, with all the parameters included?
Yeah. I think the best esport to watch is CS:GO. I think Valorant will probably surpass it here in a little bit, but I think from a viewing standpoint, I think CS in its like base level form is easy to consume and understand, right? All three of us know how to watch League of Legends because we live and breathe League of Legends, right? For me, when my team's playing League of Legends, I live and die by all of it. Like I watch scrims every day. Like I all that. If we win a world championship, it would mean so much, because I know, like, again, mentioned in the article, tip of the iceberg. People only see us come on stage and then they see us leave, right? They don't see the other hundreds of hours behind the scenes of Gumaushi showing up by himself in the morning just to practice certain things. They don't see that the coach gave us a pocket pick before we went on stage yesterday. They don't see all the hours and struggles and fights and arguments and like strategizing that goes into this. So like, for me, if we can win the world championship in League, knowing like who we are as an organization, like it would mean like the world. League's hard to watch if you don't know what the hell you're looking at. All right, it's just like, it's the reason Overwatch was struggling on TV, because it's really fast paced. So games like FPS games are easy to watch. I also kind of like Rocket League, to be honest. Like, I don't play it, but like cars playing football, I think everyone can like get on board with that, because like, yeah, okay, I get it. A car is going to put a soccer ball into the thing. That's cool. But I wish like I don't watch NBA 2K, but I wish like NCAA football is a game that's coming back next summer. I like that game as well. I wish it was like an esport, but no, I think I think the FPS games are easier to consume and watch.
Yeah,
and it's a fun experience. Live events, League of Legends, like has been, live esports. I was in unfortunately in Madrid when G2 beat us, and the stadium was shaking like massively, and we sell out. We cheer until the last minute. We got to experience a little bit of that in Busan at MSI. Like, a live esports event experience. It's, if you like don't like esports, you think it's like, oh, it's nerdy or whatever. Like, go to an actual event, and they close your eyes, you'll feel like you're at a traditional sporting event. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, is like, that's why we need more live events, because you can convert someone who's never like been into esports by taking them to an actual event and letting them watch. Because like the whole notion of like, oh, why do you want to watch people play video games? Like, well, why do you want to watch people play basketball or football or soccer or whatever? Like, you want to watch greatness. You want to watch the best of the best do their thing, for 2 hours, 3 hours. And I think if you get more people to watch in person, it'll convert a lot of people.
That got me so hyped, honestly, especially with the world right now, and going to the US to enjoy it all. Honestly, thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and personal thoughts on all of these topics. I have one last question, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Given everything you've accomplished and everything you've seen, and how you have a vision around the whole industry, and I don't know what's the next step on your career if you have one, but if you would talk to little Joe from 15-year-old Joe,
Mhm.
and he would give himself an advice, what would it be? Professionally or personally?
I would say the advice is kind of what I tell my team is to bet on yourself. It is honestly like, I got advice early on in my career that no one cares about Joe except for Joe. And it's really important to, when you're married, it's different. Like you're doing decisions as a duo, right? It's not like I don't make decisions on my own. Like my wife and I are a team, right? So you have to make decisions, for yourself that way. But it's important to take risks on your career and not just stay the same course, because there's a lot of missed opportunities when you don't, take those bets. Like I wasn't in gaming, I was in finance. I was perfectly happy with what I was doing, but this past 3 years, have been insane. 4 if you count the year of the fusion. So like, I would say just bet on yourself. Go outside your comfort zone. A lot of it also too, like reach out to people, because surprisingly, like people in the gaming space are much more accessible and willing to like talk and bend an ear. I try not to be transactional in my relationships. I try to like just be on a level, and like you ask me a question, I give you an answer. Like I do like that. There's a lot of folks in the space that are also not transactional. Like it's not like, what can you do for me if I answer your question? It's like, hey, like help people out. Especially because we're a young industry, and I think it's really important to just give people opportunities. Like if you look how I try to hire people that come from outside of gaming to my team at T1, because I want different perspectives. I think it's really important. So I think reaching out to people that you admire from a work perspective. Also, like having lost my COO last year tragically, he passed away, in July. Like, don't leave things unsaid. Like, just if you don't, if you feel strongly about something and have an opinion, if you love somebody, like if you want to give someone a compliment, like you should share those thoughts, because you don't know when the timing is up. And I think it's really important. The tough lessons I learned this past year, just with that. So, I think making sure that you don't leave things unsaid, and you take risks and bet on yourself. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But at the end of the day, when you're 80 years old and you're sitting on the beach somewhere, and you're looking at the tally of your career and your personal life, and that there's more good than bad by taking that approach.
Joe, where do I buy my jersey? How do it's the G2 thing. It's like, can I get free merch?
Give me free merch.
No, just for all the people, I know that there is a huge fan base in France for T1, since because like the casters, are fanboys. I'm not gonna use
Bias
the word
is an
fanboys,
understatement. I
would use a worse word than that, but they're just like huge fanboys since 2013. So obviously it drives, and it drove a huge bunch of our audience to actually cater and support T1. So do you have any special message for like the French audience? Even though this podcast in English and for a broader audience, but
they will watch it anyway.
Specific French fans, do you have something to say?
Honestly, like the French fans have been really great to us. I've seen it even recently with like interacting with the Carmine Court fans, and I know the casters you're talking about, and yeah, they are. We'll say fanboys to be nice, but they are something. No, I think it's been great. I think it's really important for us to have fans in other regions outside of Korea, and we try to speak to those fans. Obviously, we have the language barrier from our guys' standpoints, but we try to put on a product that people can be proud of, whether they're in our region or not. So I love the French support. I'm bummed that in 2019 I wasn't on my way to Paris for finals like I should have been, because we were right there. But it's been great having the French support, because they are super passionate and a fickle fan base, and like to the fact that they were even willing to support us, I appreciate, because I know like the French fans are not easy to impress. So the fact that they like what they see with us is great. And I hope Camito invites me to France one day for one of his big events. I get to go rub shoulders with the French fans and see the stadium environment, because it looks pretty dope from watching from afar.
We'll give you the greatest welcome, that's for sure. And honestly, speaking from, I've always been a fan of the OG and the LCK and the whole Korean culture, and especially I mean, T1, you have to be a fan of the organization and what you guys achieved. It's amazing as a fan that the most successful and famous org is also the one that opened up first to the West. And that's not something common, and that's not something we expected. And it's easier for fans, I think, to, I don't know, respond to T1 and to associate with T1 than it was in the past. Keeping the prestige, of course, also. But yeah, all this to say, we appreciate it a lot. And also we appreciate the fact that you took this time today to talk to us, Joe. And that you're always so open in interviews and interactions that you have. So thank you. And I hope the interview was fine for you. And yeah, thanks again for coming today.
Thank you guys so much. The interview was great. You guys are the best. I know I was angling to be guest number one, so I appreciate that.
We got it.
We've made it. So
Alright.
here I am, folks.
Are you gonna be?
Thank you so much, Joe, and we'll see you in New York.
Yeah. Hopefully in the
see you
US soon. I don't know if you plan on being there. I think you do.
I mean, I hope I am in New York, and then I'm in Atlanta, and then I'm in San Francisco.
Amazing.
So like, yeah, I have plans. So
Awesome.
I hope I see you guys there.
Well, best of luck in your run. Not too much because you're facing one of my teams, but still, we'll see about that. Thank you, Joe. Zab, thank you also. The GOAT, as always. Amazing doing podcast with you. And thank you all for watching this first episode of Yonko. We'll be back shortly with a second guest. Hope you like the content. Click on the bell if you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.